Today we are going to talk about what teaching is all about, or what is the role of a teacher. So initially I thought I should do some kind of outreach activities and go to some schools and interact with teachers and then discuss and share my ideas on teaching with them. But then I thought YouTube is a larger medium to do this, because the reach of YouTube is much beyond the teachers of our locality or just our country. So it's more of an international medium and more people can benefit from discussion. Now let us talk about the role of a teacher. Now, what teaching is all about. See, uh, around 10 years back or 20 years back, I would say, uh, the medium of learning was basically books. But slowly things have changed with this era of internet and all these kind of online resources. Now so much of material is available over the internet that you basically don't need anyone, and there are things which are given there in a easy manner, like you can understand everything and everything is there. Then what's the role of the teacher then? Even before internet came, actually all the information was there on the books and everywhere. Then why did we need a teacher? So that's the first question to ask. Now we can understand this, why we need a teacher, from two perspectives. One is like, what's the biggest blockade for a student in learning? So you can think of it as a hill, and a student is standing here, and the student has to cross a hill and go to the other side of the hill. Now, the student needs a medium to just go to the top of the hill and then, like, basically just go to the top of the hill. So it's that he can't do on its own. Even if everything is available, he does not have the motivation. The role of a teacher is to lower the height of the hill, or somehow make a way that the student can easily access that path. The student can do it on his own, but it's pretty difficult to do, and there are only highly motivated students who can do on their own. So that's basically one way. You can think of it in another way. So there is a student standing here, and there's a pit on the way, and the student has to reach the others on the other side of the pit. And here comes the role of the teacher, who can provide a kind of pathway for the student to just not fall into the pit safely, uh, move through it and go to the other side of this. So that's one thing which one should always remember, that although there is a lot of material there, but all the students do not have the ability to do things on their own. And you might have heard of very few examples where people have just done so well in learning on their own without the help of any teacher or school or whatever it is. So basically, for an average student, or even for an above average student, first thing is you need a teacher. Now what does the teacher do for the student, that's a different matter, but basically a teacher is required even if there is information available. So to sift through everything, the teacher is required at least as a guide. Okay, now let's talk about the second thing, that's the types of teaching styles. What I have usually seen is you have a dais or something, some kind of place where you stand as a, basically as a preceptor. So you are the preceptor and there are students sitting around you, and then basically you teach. So what that means is that there is a difference. There is inadvertently a difference between you and the students. This means you are not really at the level of the students, because you have distinguished yourself from the whole class. So what we should keep in mind is that that is not the only way of teaching. There are other ways through which classroom environment can be set up and other things can be done. And uh, like basically what I mean is the interaction between the students and the teacher, and somehow making the students comfortable is very important in class setup. Then how do you teach in the class? There are all kinds of teachers, like uh, including me, uh, who have different ways of teaching. But one of the easiest way I've seen the teachers have found for teaching, especially in higher education, is they just bring the notes and start dictating them to the students. What is the meaning of dictation? So there is information you have got from somewhere and you're dictating that information, you're just passing on the information, and the onus of understanding that information is on the student. Basically, you're not helping the student at all in learning, you're just providing the material and some kind of guidance that, look, this is a material I'm going to put in the exam, and you should mug this up or find some way to learn this material and then answer the question whatever I'm going to give based on this. And that is how this is going to happen. So that's one thing, one difficulty in teaching, especially in higher education, where where the teacher does not really understand what is his or her role. And even if the teacher understands what is his or her role, he's not able to appreciate it, he's not able to work hard enough so that he can actually live up to the expectation of the students. It's not that the teacher does not understand what he's doing if he's dictating in class or not doing it in a proper fashion. He understands that there is a lack on his or her part, but still he's not ready to actually work hard to uh, make himself or herself a better teacher. Especially, I'd say it's a lethargy on the part of the teacher. And then second problem is sometimes, like, the teachers actually harass the students if they ask questions just on the name of discipline. You're asking too many questions and you're just, creating nuisance in the class or whatever. So this actually kind of, it saves the teacher. The teacher takes a pretext that you are creating some nuisance in the class, let me teach the students. You are not allowed to ask question because I have to complete a certain part of the syllabus or whatever it is. But that's not the idea of teaching. So harassment is one thing. Then there is a language barrier also. uh, I just I'm just recalling one example. I met a student in my university, and he told me this thing, that when he came to the university as a new student, there was a teacher and who was teaching, and the teacher was basically trying to teach in Hindi. And now the student was an NRI student and he came from Dubai, but he was not very comfortable with Hindi. And he just stood up in the class and he told the teacher, ma'am or sir, can you please speak in English because I can't understand Hindi. Now, without understanding the background of the student or what he's asking or whether it is a real problem with the student or not, the teacher took it on herself that he's just kind of, not respecting her enough or whatever, and she or he told her to just get out of the class. Now, I was amazed with this thing, that did it really happen in a class? Like, what kind of teacher he or she is if he or she is asking the student, just go out of the class, I cannot speak in or in a certain language. So this what this tells me is that some of the individuals or teachers have very fragile egos, and they really hurt if the student says something. Like, I don't feel like just telling the teacher to speak in a certain language is creating nuisance or it is creating indiscipline, but this is how some teachers take so hard on themselves. They just emphasize too much on discipline and other things, and in the pretext of discipline, they just secure themselves from just not they secure themselves so that the students don't ask them questions. So these are few problems, and I think they are very general problems. Like, I'm just talking in context of higher education, but these all things can be recalled by anyone in other media of education. Now, the next thing is, what kind of classroom can be constructed? Like, basically, in India, we have monotonous type of classrooms. We have dais, a blackboard, the teacher is teaching there, and then you have chairs or benches for the students to sit, and there's nothing more than that. That is one way actually, but there are other ways. The concept of education has evolved now, and there have been researches that the type of the classroom in which the student is sitting, it also affects the learning process. The type of blackboard, the chalk, the media you are using, everything has an impact of on learning. So, when I was in the University of Lethbridge in Canada, actually, I used to attend some teaching classes, and at that time, I came to know that there are other ways to set up classrooms also, and there were actually some classrooms which were really set up in a different way. So, one of the ways I came to know was that we can put the students in groups essentially, so you can make some kind of oval tables where 5 to 6 students can sit on each table, and the teacher, rather than going to the blackboard and teach, the teacher can just roam around, give an assignment to the group, and then the group tries to solve it during the teaching hours, and then they discuss and collect. So essentially it is basically a model of peer-to-peer training where the students are learning among themselves. And you can also recall when you're teaching on a blackboard and you're dictating, like you can yourself understand how much the student is learning during that period. He has to either go back and then learn the things on his own, or he doesn't understand anything even at the end of the course or whatever. So basically this means that we should always be ready to try alternate strategies of teaching, you know. And then what teaching is all about, like when I'm teaching a particular subject, what is the learning outcome from that subject, that one should always remember. You know, there is a term called Bloom's taxonomy. Now, what basically Bloom's taxonomy tells us is uh, basically what teaching is all about. So there are many more aspects to teaching rather than just going to the class and then teach and ask the same questions in the exam through which the students pass. That's basically what happens in a lot of colleges and universities in India, and maybe there it is happening in other countries also. I don't know. I can just talk about my surroundings at this moment. So I think every one of us should look, as a teacher, should look at Bloom's taxonomy and find out what it is all about. I'm not going to get into the details of that in this video. We can talk about it in the next video or sometimes later on, because it's a subject in itself. Now, there is another thing. There is one argument which is given, especially in higher education, in context of teaching, that I cannot teach everything in the class because knowledge is infinite, and I just want to introduce the student to the tip of the knowledge and I don't want to go beyond that. See, look, that's okay. You can just introduce a student, but there is a lot more which you can do actually as a teacher. If you're just telling the student just pick this book and read it up, the student is not going to do it on its own. There are very few students who will be able to do it, and a lot of students will not be able to do that. Even if we understand that knowledge is infinite, but the syllabus or whatever is given to do to you for to teach is finite actually. Even if you do a good job motivating the students to read or to acquire that knowledge, that is good enough, you know. Like I have heard this somewhere, that teaching is, you know, teaching or learning or school teaching or college teaching is 90% motivation and 10% teaching. And I know like a lot of teachers fail in motivating the students, or they don't motivate the students at all in the class. Basically, they sometimes take teaching as a mechanical job. Like I have to go to the class, I have to, you know, deliver certain lectures or whatever it is, or talk to the student. If I have not prepared the lecture, I will talk about some topic with the students and come back, and that's all I'm gonna do today. But that is not it is. Like you should actually, every teacher should spend at least 10 minutes of his or her class in motivating the students and motivating them to learn, you know, like uh, motivating them to do more than what they're capable of, even more than what they're capable of essentially, or they can, sorry, get rid of their barriers and then move forward on their own. Now there is another thing which I feel I should talk about. That's difference between teaching and coaching. You know, I'm in higher education and I have constantly seen students from my university attending the coaching classes, extra coaching classes for preparing for exams like JAM, which is basically an exam for getting into an MSc program in IITs or some other elite institutions, or the UGC CSIR NET exam, which is there for acquiring a fellowship to pursue research, uh, or to qualify for the lecturership or to teach in a college or whatever it is. So the basically the syllabus of these all these exams is what you learn from your university or college teaching, what you learn there in your classes. But still, the students prefer to spend money, which is a lot of money, much more than they even pay in the university, and they go to the coaching institutes and then work hard, maybe work hard or whatever it is, they learn from there, and a lot of them qualify these exams from the coaching institutes. Sometimes I think the professors in the universities and colleges, a lot of times they're more qualified than people who teach in the coaching centers. Now, what is the problem then? If I am a professor, I am highly qualified professor, there is no doubt that I have knowledge, I have good knowledge, but then the student is preferring to go outside and then going for coaching, and then finding the people who teach at the coaching centers better than their own professors. Now, what is the problem? Like, I have thought about this thing a lot of times. Then there are a few things which come to my mind. The first thing is, what I feel is the teachers, they are not, the professors or the teachers, they're not doing their part well. Like, they are not putting enough of the hard work that the student can there, so that they can live up to the expectations of the students. And the second thing is, I believe the second thing is pedagogy. There are two terms, one is pedagogy and second is andragogy. Now, pedagogy means teaching the kids or teaching children, and andragogy means teaching adults. Now, I think the pedagogy, the way of teaching of these coaching institutes is very different from how we teach in the universities. In the universities or colleges, we see the students as adults probably, and we think that even if we just tell them a little bit of information, they are going to do everything else on their own, which is not really the case actually. On the other hand, in the coaching institutes, the teachers who teach in coaching institutes, they take it on their own, that I am the driver and I will be the one who will be giving everything to the students. I will be providing the assignments, I will be scheduling everything for the student, and that is how it works. And of course, like, I don't think the people at the coaching centers are more qualified than the university teachers, but still I think they know what they're doing. And sometimes when we do college or university teaching, even if we know what we are doing, we do not work enough hard so that we can excel in what we are teaching to the students. So these are the few thoughts I wanted to share today about the teaching. Let me know what you think about the problems in higher education, or especially at the teaching part, and then we can talk further about it in the next videos. Thank you very much for listening to me and giving me an opportunity to just share my thoughts on this platform.